All right. So I am super stoked today because I'm going to have, a person on that has been a good friend to me, a mentor. He's really given me some great sound advice and referred clients to me as well. So Joshua Dirks, this guy has been in the digital marketing space before it was even really a cool thing to do. He started before it was cool, and now he's still there while it is cool. You started back in what, 2005, 2006, breaking into the digital marketing, and then he evolved, and now he owns his own company called Project Bionic, which that's been around for 11 plus years. So if anybody's to talk to in terms of social media marketing, this is the guy. So Joshua, I'm glad to have you on this interview. I'm super stoked.
Mr. Alex, my pleasure, buddy. Happy afternoon to you, man. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to be able to get on with someone like yourself and share my story and hopefully get some tips and hints to people out there about who might be struggling with social media, might be wondering why it's not working for them, might be wondering if it should work for them, that kind of stuff. So always a pleasure to jump on and talk about these kind of things and try to depart some knowledge or some action steps out there. So thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm glad you're jumping on with me. So we could just jump right into things. So you've been in the industry for a while. How did you get your start in the digital marketing world?
Yeah, it's funny. I was born Texan and ran around Texas for most of my life and worked for some big companies on the national level. But in 2002, I made the jump from Austin to Seattle. And when I moved up here, I got on with a moving and storage company. And the moving storage company was the first guys to kind of bring the containers to your door, allow you to pack them up, and we either stored them or moved them for you. As many people like to refer to, so like pods. Unfortunately, we were before pods. So if you want to talk about the power of marketing and branding, there's a great lesson for you right in that one thing alone. However, as we were looking to compete against the big guys, we were looking for new ways of marketing. And so I was booked one of my bosses who said, "You don't have any friends yet, but you just showed up to town. Why don't you read this stuff and figure it out?" And so a couple weeks later, we put up our very first ad on DoubleClick at that point in time with a little site called Google. I got a big ration of you know what because I wasn't using Yahoo at the time, which was a 300-pound gorilla. But very quickly, we started seeing that search was working for us. I went on to do SEO work. I left that company, went on to work on Honda British Air's account for a company out of Orem, Utah. From there, I started my own web development company, then brought on by Intercom Communications, the fourth, fifth largest radio broadcast company in the United States, helped them upgrade their tech stack, and then train people on how to sell digital assets and integrated marketing solutions. And Alex, that's really kind of where my passion around social kind of started. It was never around, I want to figure out a job so I can pay myself to play on Twitter all day, although it's really kind of the sexy part of my job. But at the end of the day, I noticed that in 2007, as consumers, we're starting giving pixel data to marketers about who we are, what we like, that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, as marketers typically do, we weren't honoring that in any way, shape, or form. We were still doing mass spray and pray and just hoping it worked. And I got really infatuated with a concept called narrowcasting or slivercasting. So I started playing with Twitter and YouTube at the time. And despite my youthfulness, I was not of age to have a Facebook account in college. Popped out EDU environment. I was able to go ahead and start looking at that and realize those were the first platforms that we were going to be able to start to do narrowcasting or slivercasting at scale. So in June of 2009, in the very basement I'm sitting in right now, we started what was then Social Creature Media and have morphed into Project Bionic. It's been a wild ride over 11 years. It's been really, really exciting. It's been an incredibly challenging market to be in. But it is with COVID-19 and all that stuff, I think that those brands and those businesses that have established really strong social presences have really been able to meet the challenge right now. And those that haven't are suffering the consequences for not thinking about those things and moving in those directions.
Wow, you just dropped a lot of gold gems within that first intro. That makes me even more happy of why I have you on this interview. So you hit different parts of the digital marketing world, from web design to doing Google ads. When you got into social media, I know it was still in its young age. It's still young now. What was that first year like for you, trying to figure things out where, with what to do?
Yeah, no, it was a wild time. I mean, 2009 was not the most rip-roaring time economics-wise. So trying to convince people to slice off a piece of their already reduced budget to invest in something that many thought was just teenage conversations was quite the challenge. I'll never forget my first sales pitch. I went into Carter Subaru, Carter B. Dub, the Carter family, and Jen Moran have been very good to me through the years. They're still a client 11 years later, so I can't thank them enough. But she was like, Josh, what the hell are you going to do for me? And I said, I don't really know, Jen. I mean, we're going to start a Facebook and Twitter account. We're going to start putting out content. Let's see what happens. She goes, well, how much is it going to cost me? I gave her some prices. She goes, okay, let's do it. And so that very persuasive sales pitch is actually where we got our first client from. I think that first year was really interesting because social was so young at the time. The platforms and what they offered you were so limited compared to the galaxy they become to this day. And so it was really the hand-to-hand, the rudimentary stuff, like great copy. You know, do we really need images at the time? And we started with copywriters initially and moved into graphics, which is kind of funny because most creative groups start at the visual side and we'll move into copy. We actually started almost more like a traditional newspaper, something like that, where we had our writers and things like that really leading the creative charge and the tone on things. But it was a lot of, you know, evangelizing. It was a lot of risk taking. I started to come with seed money that I made from my Google investment when they went IPO. And so, you know, it was a dogfight. I always say that when you're in startup mode, it's like a back alley fist fight, right? You tumble out of the well-lit bar that was your corporate job, and all of a sudden you're in the back alley and you're fighting. You don't know how many guys. And also there's a guy on your back and you're like, is this my buddy or is this the person that's not? And so my partners and I, it was a lot of that, just fighting it out, really kind of understanding what it meant, understanding how to show value in it. Because even the analytics that time were so rudimentary that it was hard sometimes to go through and you know, stack up our results against a Google or somebody like that. So I think that in that first year, a lot of it was focused on the processes and the people, if you will, and really inventing the product as we went. As I told my team at the time, there is no book on this. We are writing it every single day. And so we're going to make literally thousands of mistakes this year. My pet peeve would be if we make the same mistake twice. So it was really a lot of experimenting. It was like, nope, don't do that. Don't touch that. That's hot. That'll hurt. Oh, this is good. This works. This doesn't. That kind of stuff. And so really just kind of being aggressively teachable and always inquisitive in how we were looking at the space and not allowing our egos to get in the way, truly allowing data to lead and great ideas to lead was really a big component of the success in the first year.
Wow, that's incredible. So, I mean, with all that being said, you guys really had to fight. You had to fight to figure this thing out before there was a manual or even guidance on how to crack the code with social media. You know, with that being said, as we, you know, and I'm going to get to where we're at now, but before we get there, social media has evolved over the years. You know, there's new things that are coming out every day. You got TikTok now, you got Instagram. How, you know, once you figured out the code to those first couple platforms, how have you been able to keep your ear to the changes or the new trends that's coming up? And how have you been able to adapt to some of those new changes?
Great question. I think first and foremost, don't get me wrong, we have not cracked the code necessarily on any of these platforms. As I use the analogy all the time, we're building sandcastles in other people's front yards. If they decide they don't want sandcastles, we'll go ahead and make lawn art, right?
Yeah.
we're truly working on other people's platforms. So the cracking of the code is an ever changing and ongoing process that keeps you young at heart in a lot of ways. So if you don't like change, social media space is definitely not your bailiwick. What I would say about that is that as we got into space, that idea of creating a really good creative hypothesis and then testing that against data and then allowing data to guide those things was really important in how we had informed the product and how we work with a customer or a client in a very collaborative partnership type of way. I think one of the biggest things has been, as you mentioned, Al, we've had 10, 15 new social media networks come along in the last 11 years. Some still with us today. Some have gone the way of the bison as time went. And I think that what we look at Project Bionic is when can we go ahead and take data sets that allow us to go ahead and justify the investment and the spend on those platforms. Mm-hmm. So Snapchat was a really hard thing for many, many years because the whole idea of how many people use your filter and how many people saw your filter does not go ahead and wow a CFO of a corporate, Inc. 500 company in any way, shape, or form. He's like, well, if I'm investing $20,000 into this filter, it's successful in LA, what was my return on it, right? And so that has been where we might at Project Bright have been a little slow in sometimes recommending platforms because we wanted to ensure the data was there to justify the effort and the investment that people are putting in. But as of how do I stay current, how do I stay on top of these platforms? Alex, I'm really blessed and fortunate that I don't have to. I've been able to work with, I have a great team of 20 people at Project Bionic that they come from all different facets of the world and different interests. I say we're a merry band of weirdos that have a really common cause. It's fantastic, and we love the celebration of those differences. But because of that, we really encourage the innovation for people to take a leadership role when the new platform comes out and start to experiment with it and play with it and really start to understand the back end of it. And then as the data catches, now we already have theories and ideas that we can begin to test. And a lot of times with for Project Bionic itself, the brand, we're out there experimenting and doing things on new platforms. So that way, at least we have the working knowledge base. So once the knowledge base and the data catch one another, that's when we can feel like we can constantly go out and start putting customers on it and convincing partners that it's time to make that investment.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So you guys, obviously you go out into the wild west and test things out, but using the data in combination with, rapid experimentation is critical for you guys to figure out new platforms. So I've been doing a little bit of research and just kind of looking at, learning about some of the big concerns, or hesitations that I've seen people have with social media. How do you, what's your thoughts on being focused on, high quality content versus just being consistent and getting stuff out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a duality in a lot of ways. I think you have to be consistent, but at the same time, I think the days. I mean, I remember when YouTube came out, right? When YouTube came out, it was super fun. We watched these incredibly pixelated images of 13-year-olds breaking their arms off skateboards or grandpa slipping down the stairs, and the content was crap, right? It wasn't great quality, but the ability for us to go ahead and just enjoy the moment was there, right? And it was the first time we were seeing this kind of stuff where you could publish yourself online, so that there was that ability. But I think very rapidly, all of a sudden, people came into YouTube and started putting stuff of higher content, of higher quality on there. And so while I know there's a lot of people and the Gary V's of the world say, just start publishing it, who cares? I think that for some people that works. But there are other people that I think that it harms you in a big way. And I think that if you wouldn't let the 22-year-old at the front desk write your television spot, why are you letting them write your Instagram post? Right? So that's part of what's really weird about us, Alex, is that we actually hire. I mean, I've been hugged by many mothers because we hire English majors, we hire graphic artists, we hire people that were trained classically in the arts, and then bring them along into social media theory and lace them up. So the content. And at Project Bionic, we have a value of excellence, and everything we do has to be excellent on behalf of our clients. And we'd actually rather err on less posting with more high quality, especially because of the algorithm introduction over the last few years. The algorithm has really changed the need to post so much on a regular basis. You're putting boosted budgets behind each piece of content, so you can invest more deeply in the quality and go ahead and still get the eyeballs and the reactions that you want by being there consistently.
I love that. Now, with one thing you mentioned is this sophistication in terms of how you guys attack your social media plan. And I want to segue into, right now we have the COVID-19 going on. It's chaotic, and some businesses, they're just like at a standstill. They don't know what to do, and they've been thinking about social media, but they don't know how to even get started. What would be your recommendation for a new business, or not? I take that back. A business that is new to social media and they're just trying to figure out.
Yeah. So I think the big thing to first of all commit, if we're not sub 30 on this phone call, is that social media is not necessarily fun or easy for us when we first start out. I always joke that it's a lot like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
You first get to the gym, you feel awkward. You're new. You see relationships going on in the gym that you're not part of. Do I have the right clothes on? And you're more self-conscious about what's going on. and oftentimes people burn out because they try to go for an hour every other day or something like that, and they burn out and don't do the gym after January 15th, right? So what I really tell people is start small and grow over time. So make a commitment to spending 20 or 30 minutes every day in social media and participate with it, and start, I think you hit on something really, really important, is don't just get in and start firing away. Build out a strategy, build out what you're going to talk about, build out what actions you want people to take and how you want them to interact with your content so it moves the needle for the business as well. If you can frame up that strategy initially, then get into the space. And, for a small person, 3 posts per week is absolutely appropriate. You can go ahead and do that. We had a content calendar. I have an attorney I work with out of Bury, and he lays out his little content calendar of 3 posts per week before the month even starts. Mm-hmm. And then Monday, he goes through and actually writes all of his posts for that week and then schedules them inside of Facebook and LinkedIn. And then he has a reminder in his calendar to go back through and look at those things. So I think that just like going to the gym, just get in there and make a commitment, just stick with it and realize that it is painful and it is a little awkward and the results are not going to come right away. But over time, over consistency, all of a sudden, you'll spend your 20 minutes on the treadmill and then you might go pick up a barbell. Before you know it, you're lifting weights and just having those same relationships a year later that you saw when you first entered the gym. It's just that consistency of being there and being willing to go ahead and think about it, coupled with strategy and those intentional outcomes that you're wanting to drive.
Listening to the points you just made me think about something you mentioned at the beginning of how important it is for I completely forgot what I wanted to say. I hate when that happens. It was right on the tip of my tongue, and I was so pumped about being able to mention it. I would say if you were to give now I think it came back to me. What do you think? You mentioned earlier talking about businesses that were prepared and not so much prepared, but focused on building their social presence before this COVID-19 happened. They put themselves in a better position than the ones who haven't. What do you, the ones who haven't, what do you see things in terms of moving forward, how this COVID-19 is going to be able to impact our, the social media world?
Well, I'm excited because I think, Alex Canley, between you and me, between your email business and my social media business, that's the 3-headed hydra. You have your website, which is your storefront now, right? This is the way it's going to look. You have your search engine stuff, which is going to be your roads and your lights and all that kind of stuff. And then you're going to have email and social, which is truly the ones that are going to drive the traffic and bring it in for you, right? Like we're watching the COVID stuff. People aren't watching traditional television right now. They're watching Netflix and stuff like that. So you can't even reach them through your television campaigns. People aren't talking about the radio right now. Some people read many newspapers, right? Like this idea that you could go ahead and put your head in the sand. And, I'll call them out. I have a huge issue right now with a lot of people that are running around saying the sky is falling and woe is me, when I'm watching companies like Canalys that have James Beard winners and them pivoting from a 5-star restaurant into a bagel and hamburger shop, right?
Wow.
So it's really incumbent that you have nimble thinking as a leader. And I think the last 10 years, because the economy was so good, a lot of small and medium-sized business owners, instead of investing in their business and getting prepared for the digital age, started taking money off the table in profits and didn't invest that back in their business. And COVID, because of the suddenness of it, caught most of the people with their pants down. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying. I think there's a lot of people in a lot of pain. Please don't get my zealousness around this comment as glee in any way, shape, or form. I hate watching other human beings in pain.
Yeah.
But I also think that pain is self-inflicted because we've been talking about digital since 2002 when I first got into space, right? And I've watched so many businesses drag their feet and not make those investments. And so those are the industries, those are the people, those are the things now that I'm seeing where they've just been wrecked by this. And so I think if you're one of those businesses, you're one of those, it's really incumbent upon yourself to first have that conversation with yourself of what role did I play in this? And did I make some mistakes along the years and I cut some corners thinking I could get to retirement or thinking that I could go ahead and sell the business before this started to come to age? Well, having that conversation will then give you a jumping off point to truly understand what you missed and what you need to start putting in place is piling to ensure, because I'll be damned, Alex. I don't think this is the last time we're going to see one of these things. And so I think it's really important that if if you got your college pants down this time around, is I hope you're taking copious notes and truly ideating around how you're going to solve this in the future and not allowing fear and anxiety to cripple you or to push you into a place of stagnation.
Awesome. I guess that leaves me with one last question, since we're coming up on time. If you were to give one piece of advice to a business owner right now in terms of social media, what would you give them if there was only one thing that you could share with the business owner?
One thing. Become obsessively curious about the space and start to really spend time daily and weekly learning and experimenting with the space, whether it's on your own persona or your business, but get yourself involved. Standing on the sideline is never going to, you got to show up, be present to win the game, right? So get involved. 83% of Twitter accounts never posted a tweet. It doesn't mean you can't participate in Twitter, right? And the comment threads and that kind of stuff. Just get in and start experimenting. But think about what you want from that, and don't go down the traditional lines of, oh, well, it's B2B, so I'm LinkedIn and on Twitter, right? Like that drives me flipping nuts. Get in and think about, whether it's Facebook and where they're at or Instagram and where they're at. Think about these different platforms and think about what the right fit is, but become just obsessively curious about the space and learn about it and become a student of the space. Because I was just on a call today with a bunch of people from the business journals around the country talking about, instead of these big social networks we all talk about, what about Slack channels that are all around just marketers, right? What about Slack channels, these walled gardens? You have a front-facing thing, then you have a private network on the back side of that. I think that's going to start to become what evolves out of this situation. I know if anything's grown during this COVID situation, it has definitely been my Slack channel. I've gone from having 4 accounts to having 13 or 14 accounts.
Wow.
Different things. And most of them are communities of people or other business leaders that are talking about things or sharing secrets. So what did you hear about PPP and that kind of stuff? So, this stuff is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And if you need a resource, Eric Qualman, who actually his businesses and the mid O's was one that led brands through the 2008, 2009 recession and actually came out with market share. And he wrote a book called Socialnomics that I've given to tens of people, hundreds of people probably.
I'm writing that down.
It's one of the best reads because it truly breaks it down in a way to make social this very attainable, very understandable kind of dynamic that you can start to understand at a much higher level.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm glad I was able to have you for an interview, and I'm super excited for the upcoming Digital Shift Summit.
Hey, Alex, thanks again for having me on. It's always fun to chat with you, man. Our lunches over Thai food and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm stoked about the Digital Summit too.